This week, we get a look at Pandemic Legacy, as well as the new Dungeons & Dragons Elemental Evil Player's Companion Guide.
Then it's our topic of the week, VR headsets. How will this crazy new technology affect the future of tabletop gaming? I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and this is the Roll for Crit podcast. So if you've been following the new Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, they've been releasing books slowly going along, and a while back they announced that their new one was Elemental Evil. Now they have actually just released a Player's Companion, actually if I'm correct, for free to look at, which is really nice. And actually included 4 new races for people to play as. I don't know if you actually have, do you know if you've been able to play as any of these races beforehand?
I'm sure in past editions they've been around, but for 5th edition it's
right. But if you're curious what those races are, we got the Deep Gnomes, which I assume are gnomes.
They're gnomes, but deeper.
Yes. Goliaths. The Genocide, which are like, if I recall, elemental almost, beings. And then the how do you pronounce this again?
I don't know, the Aarakocra.
The Aarakocra, which are sort of bird people.
I don't think we said genocide right either, but so what?
Probably, yeah, but I feel much more.
That one is certainly spelled weirder. What are they, like bird people?
Yeah, so bird person.
Yeah, and there's like so it comes with like new spells and items and stuff too.
But no new classes, is that correct?
No, I don't believe so. And not, it's a companion, so it's not like, there's a reason it's free, but it's still cool that it's
Well, I mean, new races are always awesome. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm sure that means everyone's going to be like, okay, I'm half genocide, half elf.
I feel like it's like Genasi or something.
Genasi.
I don't know. But it'll give us a little taste of what's to come in the next D&D storyline, which is pretty exciting. And of course, we've been trying to continue our campaign, so maybe by the time it comes out, we'll eventually get to try some of these races ourselves.
Maybe. And if you haven't, you should check out the image Jonathan made for our group. It is fantastic.
Yeah, you can see our D&D campaign in an earlier video. Maybe we'll do some more. Maybe we'll get some more pumping out.
Someday.
In other stories, you may be familiar with Martin Wallace, game designer of games like Steam and some of the Discworld games. He's done things for lots of different publishers, but Steam and some others in particular came from Mayfair. Well, there was an interesting sort of incident over the last week where Mayfair put out a press release stating that Martin Wallace would no longer be putting out games with them. Apparently what happened is Martin Wallace was doing a game that had a limited edition and a regular edition that was being co-produced by Mayfair and Tree Frog Games, which is a company that he works more closely with. And Mayfair, for whatever reason, wanted to delay the release of the game by a year, but they had already promised some of these games for like pre-orders and things to people who had already paid in advance, so he didn't want to do that. So he asked them to let all the rights for production basically go over to Tree Frog exclusively. And then they turned around and put out this release saying, we're no longer going to be making games with the guy. So it was sort of like he said in an interview that he did not know they were going to do that. It wasn't an expected thing. They're still going to be publishing previous titles that he designed that are under their label. But it is sort of a strange, it seems almost like an overreaction, a bit of a...
Well, it's definitely interesting. I'm curious, because you said people already pre-ordered it. Was that a Kickstarter?
Yeah. I don't believe it was a Kickstarter. I think it was through their website. It was a game called Ships.
But, I mean, there's plenty of times when games get delayed.
Yeah, but if by a full year, if you're able to bypass that, he'd rather make the customers happy than make them wait, because the projected release date was already...
Right.
I mean, a year, games get delayed, but a year is extreme.
Have you heard of Ascension Collector's Edition?
Well, that's a weird situation, but usually it doesn't happen that way. But I can understand why you
the
do
Duke
that.
Nukem game, how long was that delayed for?
That's not a board game. Totally different.
But I'm very curious why they wanted. That's the thing I'm very curious about. Like, did they feel like they were going to release a game soon that was too similar or something? Or
I don't know. I think it was probably just production reasons, like for manufacturing and stuff like that. I don't know if they actually gave out a specific reason or not, though. But yeah, I don't know, just a weird little blip of publisher news for you there.
Yeah, we'll see what if anything else comes from it.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm surprised that they're because Asmodee controls Mayfair now, don't they, or is this someone else?
No, Mayfair is still just Mayfair.
Still,
I think, yeah.
For now. For now.
I know it seems like every company is under Asmodee.
Yeah,
for now.
So be like, I assume that Asmodee's like, yeah, we just hired this guy. You're working back with him,
right?
Anyway, as we said earlier in our show, Pandemic Legacy. We finally got to see some of it, and boy, is everyone excited!
Boy!
Pre-orders went out, and I believe it was over 5,200 pre-orders currently.
Yeah, which I think is some kind of a record.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I read somewhere that if this was a Kickstarter, it would have been like the 6th most funded tabletop Kickstarter in existence.
So still behind Exploding Kittens.
Well, yeah, of course. But still a big deal. That's coming out in for Spiel and for Essen, whenever that is, October or November.
So we won't be there.
Right, probably not. But I'm sure we'll get it at some point. It looks really cool. I mean, we've talked enough about, but
yeah, I mean you can see the images on our site. I mean, we're both really excited about it. It sounds like a great idea. And aren't there 2 versions, a red and a blue?
Yeah, there's red and blue. I don't think there's any real difference. I think it's just the box art.
So in other words, you need both.
Yeah, you gotta buy both. It's like Pokemon all over again.
I'm a red version guy. Oh, screw you, I'm blue.
There's gonna be some serious backlash.
So does that mean we're gonna get Pandemic Legacy Yellow Edition?
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Anyway, that'll be exciting. But for our final piece of news today, bit of a downer. You may have heard over the last week, as I laughed through it, Terry Pratchett, well-known author of the Discworld series of novels, passed away at age 66. He had been dealing with Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's disease for, I think, since 2007. It was a big deal. He was still managing to write books through it. He had written a lot about the subject. But he, of course, there were a number of strategy and role-playing games based on the Discworld series, which I've never played, but that's why it's relevant for our audience. I have read some of his books, including the Discworld ones. I don't know if you're familiar with any of that.
No, at least not that I can think of.
But it's very, he's very in the same vein as Hitchhiker's Guide. That's kind of humor. Really funny, whimsical stuff. I definitely recommend checking out looking it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we even mentioned before with like Geiger, when Geiger died. I mean, just because they don't
H.R. Geiger, designer of Alien.
Even though these people might not directly make a board game,
Geeker, I think.
No, it's fine. I mispronounce everything.
No, so do I.
But like, these are people who have, even whether we know it or not, have greatly influenced our hobbies.
No, certainly in terms of just like the fantasy genre, and I think it's sort of like it's some sci-fi-ish stuff too, but it's like Tolkien, it's like it permeates the whole genre.
So it's really sad to see one of these people go.
Yeah, but fortunately he left behind a lot of stuff that you can look back on now. So like I said, if you haven't, I recommend checking it out. Terry Pratchett. That is the end of our news segment for the week, which means it's time for us to talk about our Kickstarter Pickstarters.
My pick this week is Among Nobles, the Bloodline building game. In this game, you start off with a male and female, put them together, royal nobility, actual people who've existed in history.
Fairly standard.
Yes, and you actually have offspring, children, and the whole point of the game is you're going to be building up your family, and you actually marry other players' daughters. You take the card and you put it under the guy, and because behind every great man is a great woman, which they actually use. And then you'll also be sending your armies around in famous places in Europe, which is really cool. I love the idea because it's sort of like you're actually building a family. You have to interact like, I don't know about your daughter. I just want to see like, what can you give me anything for it?
Yeah, I know. Like you can choose like Henry VIII and all.
Yeah, there's all these people. There's Napoleon. All of them are real people.
Napoleon.
One of the things I really like is something that I know we both tend to really like when we see is they're using like actual real like artistic pieces, which I think looks really beautiful. I mean, we've already mentioned how like Battle for Souls, we like that, as well as what's the game you have, Musée?
Yeah.
Musée. So I think that's really cool. I think it's a sort of a new, weird, interesting concept. It's going to require a lot of table space though, because you're lying.
Oh yeah.
I hope there's something in there involving inbreeding. So if you marry the same person over and over.
Back then, I mean, European and nobles. That was just what happened.
But yeah, like
no offense to any European nobles in our audience.
I think it looks really cool and interesting take. The game itself runs for 295 krona. Now that's actually Swedish, if I recall correctly, which translates about, I think it was $34, give or take. Remember, this is strictly I'm looking at from shipping to America. It's much cheaper if you were to actually pick up. Like if you're over, so if you're watching this,
cheaper if you live there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I'm giving you the price estimate from.
Got it. Yeah.
If you're expecting, because we're in America, I'm assuming our audience is probably largely leaning towards the American side.
Most likely.
But definitely something to check out.
It's mainly our parents.
Well, wait, your parents watch? Mine don't.
No, mine don't either.
Okay.
Just kidding.
We're alone.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds cool. Among Nobles.
Let me just say, it comes from Among Meeples. I forgot to mention that, and this is not their first game.
I like the synergy between the name and the company.
I hope all their games have that. I can't remember what their other game is, but I hope everything's just among this, among that, among.
Yeah, I would be for that. The game that I chose for Kickstarter this week is called Mistfall. It is a fantasy cooperative game for 1 to 4 players from NSKN Games.
Well, does that stand for something?
It sure does. Moving on. Mistfall. As I said, it's a cooperative game. It takes place on a modular sort of tile-based board, and everyone chooses a different character, and each character has their own different abilities. You can be like a warrior or whatever you kind of classes you are. And you go through, and your goal is to defeat the main sort of boss, whatever, depending on what your quest is, before time runs out. And the tiles at the start of the game are face down, so as you advance, you don't know what's going to appear, who you're going to have to fight when you get there, etc., etc. And another thing that I think is cool about it is it sort of has you have an element of progressing and developing your character and personalizing it, because as you go, you can spend points sort of on new abilities and new cards, and you actually have your own deck. So there's sort of a deck building element to it as well. So it's kind of like co-op, like Ghost Stories-esque, like fight off the enemies, get to the end, but with that more RPG-ish touch to it. And the art and the fantasy style looks pretty cool. Mistfall.
How much is it going for?
It's going for $42. I'm glad you asked for the base. I mean, without add-ons and stuff.
So are there expansions and stuff?
No, I said base. Okay. I shouldn't have said base, but there's other tiers, but that's for just the game itself.
I don't know about mine, but I was wondering, do you know if yours, how far it is? Stretch goal, like how far?
Mine was
like reaching its main goal.
Well past it.
Well past it? Yeah. Oh, so it's pretty much guaranteed. Mine's I think it just started, so it wasn't too far. I mean, it was a good way, but yeah. I'm sure a lot of people are also thrown off because they see 295 and like, oh god, and anyone.
Possible, yeah.
But two awesome games.
Two awesome games. Check them out in our links below.
For now, I think it's time for our topic of the week.
Virtual reality headsets. You've probably heard of some of them, such as the Oculus Rift. They're sort of the future, supposed will be the next craze in gaming and other technologies. They just announced HTC and Valve are working together on one called the Vive, which is actually going to be released in December of this year. So most likely we're going to be seeing other ones like the Oculus Rift, Sony's Morpheus, lots of them coming out. Now, primarily, the discussion that people have come to with these things is video games, but I'm sure there are places that they can be applied to in tabletop gaming as well, and what might that entail? We've talked about, of course, digital games in general and using apps and things like that, but this is a whole, literally, figuratively, a new playing field for actually having something on your face. Like, for example, Tabletop Simulator on Steam has been really big, so this could be sort of like a next evolution of that, potentially, where you're seeing pieces on a table in front of you or something, and playing a game with someone online when they're not in the same room as you. I don't know, thoughts?
Well, I do think it could be, depending on first of all, this all depends on the price of VR sets. Board games will not utilize them unless there's something that they can, unless developers can assume it might be readily available.
Well, I guess, there's two, to cut you off, there's two sort of ways to look at it, which is the thing by itself emulating a board game and the thing with a board game to enhance it.
All right, let's look at the first one you said.
Okay.
So it's emulating the entire board game, nothing else. I don't think this will actually come up too often. We haven't seen that video games do it too much. Like, I think we've seen Catan, Ticket to Ride.
You're talking about just general digital games?
Yeah. So in terms of them making a VR version, the reason I don't think they're going to do that as much is because the ones who have done it, most of them done it in tablet or form, expecting you to travel with it. True. And I don't expect people to be in subway cars with their VR set on and just...
That's true. Well, that's true. A lot of people, the reason I could see it from home is simply if you live far away from people. There are, some systems online already where you can play sort of like ripped off versions of games with people, sort of crudely put together.
Oh no, I can see that happening. But I mean, like your official Settlers of Catan VR.
Yeah, I feel like it really depends, like you said, on how big it takes off.
Well, no, that brings us to the second one.
Okay.
Now, let's say as an addition. Now, if VR sets become very well priced, as well in something that becomes really you can almost see it happening. I could see that actually happening in board games. The example would be with tablets and phones. We've already seen XCOM now has an app that you can use, as well as the Yellow game. It was on Kickstarter. Your phone's the ship.
Yeah. I forget what it's called, but I know you're talking.
But like that, that's what happens in technology. I can easily see. What if you were playing a game? Everyone has their headset on, and you're going through, but one person's the Cylon or something, so he has different information on the board or something.
Oh, I love that.
I think that has a lot of great possibilities because it wouldn't be. You could probably just have like your hand of cards and just like do that, and then you can secretly give someone something.
Or especially, I mean, it's what's so great about digital games too. The fact that you could have. You could have maybe you have a card maybe you actually have physical cards, but say your character card gains an extra health, it'll show a +1 when you pick it up rather than you having to remember that it has a +1.
Well, I think another thing that would be just it's been done sort of, but I know with the old it was PlayStation 3, I believe they had something Storm. It was a card game. You play the card game in front of you, but it had the PS camera on there, and when you play the card, it have a model on the TV, where you see. Like, imagine if you had this card game and you played it, and you just saw a dragon just come out.
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh, pretty much.
Right.
We're gonna be playing Yu-Gi-Oh.
It basically, I think, it makes the benefits of digital games, but with other people actually next to you.
Yeah, I actually would like that. For one, because that means the VR sets are reasonably priced and everyone has them. I would like that. Two, you can do, like I said, you can do a lot more. It's a lot easier to do hidden information.
Was there 3 or no?
Yeah, there's 3. 3, you can do beautiful models. Like I said, like the dragon popping out of the card. Can you think of any games that you can see utilize this really well with?
Specific examples? I don't know. It would be cool for role-playing games. Like D&D, as we mentioned at the top of the show.
I do find that one actually would be the hardest of them all. For this specific reason. For the monsters, sure. But for when you do your character, you visualize your character in a certain way. Like, they have to be able to build a really advanced, okay, he's this tall.
Well, I think you're thinking of it a little too, that would be hard to do. But you could do lesser stuff, like you could have... The DM could draw a map that's everyone can see, or they could just have your character sheet is always in front of you, and that could have your stats right in front of you.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Even for other kinds of games, like just having your turn order and stuff always available would be cool.
I think it would be really funny though, like we were talking about, they put a whole game on there, but you're all still sitting around a table. They made virtual Jenga, and you just walk into the room to see people
One guy walks in just... But that actually makes me think of it would be hard in terms of the purely emulating, not as an addition, because you can't. There's no physical component. It's just you're just this. Yeah. So how you wouldn't? I guess you would just have to point.
That's the thing I was thinking about was recently Microsoft's glasses. Remember and. Supposedly, if their commercial is as accurate as the guy puts on scan the room and then they build the Minecraft room based on what the furniture was.
Right.
What if you could do that with the board game or something?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there will be at least a couple to test the waters, and we'll see. It'll be really interesting once to see how those go. I could actually see Catan, for example, being one of the ones to do it just because they're one of the bigger ones and they have all their Facebook versions and stuff.
You know what would really benefit from it, I feel?
Yeah.
Arkham Horror.
Yeah.
Because you'd have the boards, and you can actually see monsters like walking about, but you can have your cards there, so you don't have like I have all this hand of all these small cards.
I feel like every week we try to come up with ways to fix Arkham Horror.
Even though I love it so much, it's just
it would be great is a way to make Arkham Horror playable again. Yeah, but yeah, no, any game like that again with lots of information.
Well, I think the reason we pick on Arkham Horror is because it's our one game we have that takes an hour to set up.
Yeah,
like there are plenty of games that are like that.
We're not Twilight Imperium players,
Yeah.
so we don't know about the struggles of that.
But it's just the one we've played a lot of, so it's the one we nitpick unfairly because we actually enjoy playing it. It's just.
But we'll see. I mean, I'm super excited. I've been excited for a long time for Oculus Rift, but it seems like these other ones might come out first, and we'll see what happens. Because there's definitely something's going to happen at some point in one way or the other, and I'm really curious to see what happens first.
But yeah, like I said, truthfully, it really comes down to the accessibility.
Install base, yeah.
Because I mean, why would you want to make a game if you know only 10% of board gamers will have the device?
Yeah, but one of these is going to take off. I'm sure. I believe it. I'm making that prediction here now.
Jonathan is unbelievably optimistic when it comes to anything VR related.
Well, look, you got Facebook backing one, Valve and HTC are backing another, and Sony on another one. They're all going head to head. Clearly, they know something that we don't. If they all fail spectacularly, it will be
no,
very weird.
They're all part of the Illuminati.
Well, that's... We're not supposed to put that. All right, but maybe you have an idea that you think would be great for VR technology and board games, or a specific company you think will come out ahead. You could comment on this video. You could send us an email. Our address is rollforcrit@gmail.com.
There's, of course, our Twitter, which should be around us. But most of this, in the end, can all be found on our site.
Oh, yeah, our wonderful website, which is rollforcrit.com, where we sell games like Dungeons & Dragons and Steam and the original Pandemic.
And hopefully Pandemic Legacy when it comes out.
Pandemic Legacy as soon as it comes out.
If you haven't been one of the 5,000 people pre-ordering it.
Right? On lots of other things, all our other videos. You can find links for our Twitter, Facebook, as you said. Subscribe to us on YouTube and our newsletter to stay in touch.
But for now, I think it's time we go play some games ourselves. So I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and this has been the Roll for Crit podcast.